Hey everyone, today I want to talk about non-functional requirements. And I decided to bring this up because I've had a few videos on things like Circle CI and um, Sonar Cube, like automated code review, static analysis stuff, but I feel like I probably should have started by talking about non-functional requirements. And that's because really that's the quality attributes. All of the things that make up high quality software are typically going to be non functional requirements. The business or the client that you work for wants something built to perform some function. And so there will be functional requirements that you would typically have defined in your stories as like acceptance criteria and such. And these will be things like the system should work as expected. It should follow these business rules and have these functions that the business wants or the client wants. And so those things are obviously your functional requirements. Now, when we talk about building high quality software, first and foremost, that means that the software does what is expected. It adheres to those functional requirements. But the other part of it is basically all of the non-functional requirements, and there are tons of them. You're not you don't necessarily like have a set of NFRs is what they're often called. You don't have a specific set of them that every application should follow. It really depends on the requirements of each application. Let me dive in a little deeper to that in just a second, but let's start by switching to my monitor here and showing you what some of these non-functional requirements are. So we're talking about things like performance, which is going to be, including things like the scalability of the software and of the system and the availability and all of those ility things. So this is a good example of what I was just saying a bit ago about how things are going to vary from project to project. If you're building your personal website and you don't expect many more than a small handful of users at any given time, then performance might not be a big concern for you. You might not need things to be able to scale to millions of users because you're only expecting a small handful of people. And so scalability and performance there is not as important of an NFR. Whereas if you're working within a company building a product that's going to be like featured in a Super Bowl advertisement, then performance and scalability is now a very big concern and one of your most important NFRs. So it's going to vary depending on the project. But in general, there are many of them that you'll kind of want in each project. So let's talk about some other ones here. We've got things like flexibility and extensibility, interoperability, portability, reusability. Not all of these are on this list. I'm just, thinking of them off the top of my head, but the ability for your software to be flexible, to be able to change. In an agile environment, the requirements that we have today are not going to be the requirements that we need tomorrow, and so our software just needs to be built in a way where it's easy to mutate, it's easy to be flexible and change over time. And so that means building things in better ways and making things more configurable and just easy to adapt. There's some obvious ones here like maintainability, and that's obviously going to go into the same kinds of things, but writing better code, understanding like what clean code is and how to, like, if you're building object-oriented systems, using things like dependency and injection and lots of different things like solid principles just to help make your object-oriented code a lot more maintainable. And testable, which is another one. Security is obviously a super big NFR, and another one that's going to vary from project to project, right? If you don't have any personal identifiable information or PII or PIFI, if you don't have any of that stuff, if you don't have like passwords going through your system or any kind of like information that needs to be considered a secret, security might not be as big as a concern to you. Now, if it is a system on the web, you still have to think about security, especially if it's like a user interface of some sort, right? You've got things like cross-site scripting and cross-site request forgery and all these like concerns that you're going to have regardless. But in general, if your system doesn't have any information that really needs to be kept secret, then security is just a little bit less of a concern as an NFR. But you got, maybe compliance. If you're in an industry that's regulated, you have to maintain compliance and documentation. Having architectural diagrams for your systems, and having the ability for new people to get up and running quickly. So yeah, all of these non-functional requirements, like I said, they're going to vary from project to project, sometimes pretty widely. But I think it's a good idea if you work in a company with a decent sized team of engineers or developers, that you just kind of look at these as a group and as a team, if you haven't before, and decide what they mean to you, and what are those important non-functional requirements for your projects that you should be adhering to. Anytime I build, especially a new project, like a greenfield project, I'm considering everything to be within the domain, of the NFRs, right? Like I want it to be performant and scalable and maintainable. And, one of the things like I didn't mention is like observability, right? Like you need to be able to monitor the infrastructure and how the software is doing, and have good logging to be able to troubleshoot and debug if issues do come up. So, just basically making it a team effort to review these things and think about what your standardized like NFRs should be for your company or for your team and your projects, and making sure that's documented, depending on what you use for your project management. You might be able to, like in TFS, or is it Azure DevOps now, you can set these up as like tasks on your stories or on your features. And some are story level, some are feature level. It varies, but it's something that is very important that I think teams should follow. So that's all I've got for today. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll catch you next time.